back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time I'm going to do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Freehold, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, normally powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. I am, of course, your host, Mike M. Rosansky. Hopefully everything is going well for you here on this Tuesday, the 28th day of October. Really starting to feel like October out there. More of a late fall, almost winter feel a little bit today, but not going to let that discourage us too much today. Hopefully you're all having a great day. Hopefully you're all coming off of a very good weekend. And I thought this was going to be a mostly positive podcast today when planning it over the weekend. I thought that I was going to come in to recording this on an upbeat vibe after what was a good weekend for yours truly, concluded with getting a new car yesterday. As we see all the time, things in life happen. Things that we didn't see coming, things that were unexpected do occur in this wacky, crazy, unpredictable, sometimes unfortunate thing we call life. Here I am on Sunday afternoon, working out, preparing for a Sunday afternoon of watching football. I've got the NFL Network on, and I see the unfortunate, heartbreaking, heart-stopping news of the passing of the legendary Jets center, Nick Mangold, at only the age of 41. Now, we had known about his disorder, his dealing with kidney dialysis, but he had only announced this, made this public to all of us only about 2 weeks ago. It was middle of this month, October 14th, that he announced this. And I figured at the time, all right, yeah, this is not good, but he's got time. We're going to hopefully find someone out there with a kidney that can be donated to him, and Nick will get to continue to go on with his life, continue to live on healthy and successfully. But then when you see the news break on Sunday morning, whenever you see a pro athlete or someone famous pass away, even if it's someone that's already been retired for a while, your heart stops, because we develop such a bond. We develop such a closeness, even as fans, even though we don't know these guys on a personal level. There are some of these players that you just latch onto, that you feel like you know them personally. And for us Jet fans, that was Nick Mangold. Nick Mangold was not just one of the greatest centers in NFL history, not just someone who hopefully at some point in the future will have his rightful place in Canton, Ohio in the Hall of Fame, but he came across as the everyman. He was not one of these guys that just because he was great at something, that was a top tier talent at his position, thought he was better than anyone else, thought that he was too big time for fans or anyone that wasn't part of the Jets. And hell, you saw it when he got inducted in the Jets Ring of Honor 3 years ago. He concluded his speech with cracking open a can of Bud Light and drinking it right there on the podium. See, he was so much like you and I. It just so happened that he could play football and could do it at a great level. 7-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first team All-Pro. And us Jet fans latched on to that, wrapped our arms around it, and loved this guy because we don't have many of these star players that are lifetime Jets. Darrelle Revis left, went to the Buccaneers, eventually won a Super Bowl with the Patriots. Curtis Martin, as great as he was as a Jet, was a Patriot before that. Kevin Mawai went on and played with Tennessee. You had Keyshawn Johnson that left and won a championship with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Nick Mangold, health got to him in the end. He was dealing with a foot problem in 2016 that led to the end of his time as a Jet, led to the end of his playing days. But he was a Jet 100% of the time he was in the NFL. And he was part of 3 playoff teams, which I know for a lot of fans, they'll say, so what? You know the history of the Jets. They're not a big-time franchise. They're not one of the premier franchises in the NFL, even despite the fact that they play in East Rutherford, New Jersey, 8 miles away from New York City. They've only made the postseason 14 times in the franchise's 66-year history. And 3 of those occasions, Nick Mangold was the starting center for that team. He was a leader on and off the field. And he was someone that, if you're a fan, you could just look up to, admire, not just who he was as a player, but the person he was, the great family man he was. And that's something that we don't think about enough when we see an athlete pass away, when we see one of these great performers pass away in any line. They're just like you and I, a human being, bleeding, living, breathing, eating, drinking. They just so happen to do something that most of us can't. And unfortunately now he leaves behind a wife and 4 children, leaving this world at the way too young of age of 41 years old. If you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, if you take one lesson away from yours truly, don't take anything for granted. Don't take this thing that we call life for granted. Because he was only 41. For, unfortunately, any one of us, it could end tomorrow. That's how unfair, that's how unpredictable, that's how wacky this thing we call life truly is. So don't take any of this for granted. Don't take tomorrow for a given, because tomorrow may not happen. And that's how Nick Mangold lived his entire life. And when you see all the outcrying of love and support, I mean, you not just with what you saw on TV with the likes of Bart Scott and Willie Colon on SNY or Rex Ryan on ESPN, but former teammates, players around the league that weren't Jets but played during his same time period, posting comments on social media, rest in peace, number 74, talking about how great a player and how great a person he was. And It's just such a shame. It's such a heartbreak to sit here today, just 2 weeks removed from him announcing this diagnosis, something that he had known for almost 20 years, even before he was playing in the NFL, but it started to get worse to the point where he was undergoing kidney dialysis. But you figured there was going to be time. You figured we were going to find a solution to this. But here we sit, October 28th, and unfortunately, Jets legend, Jets great, Jets Ring of Honor center Nick Mangold passes away at the way too early age of 41 years old. It's sad because, we look at the sports world as the candy store. We look at the sports world as our place to escape the bad things that happen in life. But then we realize these guys are human. Like I said before, they have real blood pumping through them. They need to eat, drink like the rest of us to survive. And even though they may come off as perfect, even though they may come off as above all of us, even though most of them, I would say the overwhelming majority, don't act like they're above us, show humility at performing at their craft. They're human beings just like all of us. They make mistakes. They make choices in life, some that they regret, some that they're able to overcome, some that they look at and say, why did I do that? And choices like that are, I'm sure, what people like Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, and Damon Jones are sitting there saying to themselves today, as the NBA has a pretty ugly scandal hanging over their head. One that I look at and say, it's not going to die down, not going to calm down anytime soon. We had seen this over the last couple of years, where there were players, not just in the NBA, but across all of the sports world, that are dealing with different gambling allegations, different gambling scandals, should we say. You had the situation a couple of years ago with Michael Porter Jr.'s brother, Jonte Porter, where he's now banned from the NBA. You have the situation that still hangs over Major League Baseball with two pitchers on the Cleveland Guardians, including their closer, Emmanuel Clase, who could possibly be banned for life based on gambling as far as pitch types, pitch sequences in a game. We've seen different players in the NFL get either year-long bans or half-year bans due to gambling on fantasy football or doing other fantasy sports on team property. But we haven't seen anything like this, what the NBA now has to deal with, where you have an active coach, an active assistant coach, and an active player who have been arrested as part of a wide-ranging investigation dealing with illegal sports betting and rigged poker games tied in with the mafia, which 2025, I still don't even understand how the mafia still exists, but somehow they do. That's a story for another day. Last week, a total of 34 people across 11 states involving tens of millions of dollars were arrested, part of a years-long investigation into gambling and illegal sports betting tied in with the mafia. You had Terry Rozier, who was arrested on Thursday morning down in Florida for accusations of participating in an illegal sports betting scheme using insider information for NBA games. You had Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones, who were arrested separately for their part of luring people into poker games that were rigged by the mafia. And Billups and Rozier are also both indicted on charges of wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy, all of which could, if these guys are charged, send them to prison for 20 years. Now, on the NBA side of things, this is the last thing that they want to have to deal with. This is the last thing that they want to hear at a time like this when you're less than a week into your season. Hell, it happened 2 days after opening night of the season that these reports are coming out of these three men being arrested. And since then, you've seen other names have potential loose ties, potential loose connections, or people of interest as far as potentially being involved. I don't want to name them right now because they haven't officially been charged with anything, and I feel like that would be unfair to those people to bring up their names at this moment. The NBA, for this to happen 2 days after opening night, during what is one of the 4 times a year that is the big moments for the NBAs. Opening night, Christmas, the All-Star break, and then the NBA postseason. Not a great look. Not a great appearance, and not something that Adam Silver wants to be dealing with right now, although he's always seemed to be a guy that has his head in the clouds and is way too player friendly. But the NBA put themselves in this position for these kind of potential ugly off the court things to happen. How all of the sports world has put themselves in this position when you see all of these sports are tied in with all of these gambling places, whether it be FanDuel, whether it be sports books, any one of these places that you can gamble or do fantasy sports. Hell, there's not a sport event in the world, there's not a game in the world that you can put on across any of the 4 major professional sports in this country where you can go even 10 minutes without some kind of gambling advertisement popping up on your screen, something popping up promoting this. So they've really put themselves in this position. These players and coaches that get into it, that get lured in, that get sucked into this. In the case of a guy like a Jonte Porter, you can almost understand it because that's the kind of guy that was going to be jumping around from team to team just to survive and have any form of a lengthy NBA career. He was probably not going to make the same kind of money on or off the court that his brother Michael Porter Jr. was making. So he took a risk, and unfortunately it came up lame for him, and now he's dealing with the consequences of never playing in the league again. But what I don't understand is why 2 guys like Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier would get involved in this. Chauncey Billups played for 17 seasons in the NBA. He made $106 million as a player. He probably made a good chunk of change off the court after his playing days as a successful analyst on ESPN before he got into coaching. And hell, he's probably even making more money outside of coaching. The fact that a little over a year ago, he was inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame. So that's got to carry some notoriety, carry some off-the-court profiting. And then in the case of a guy like Terry Rozier, who's made $160 million during his playing career, and he's only 31 years old, so you figure as long as he stays healthy, he's got a chance to net, another at least $60 million over the course of his career. But these guys, pending these reviews of these cases, but pending what the courts say, and now they're both put on leave from their teams, put on leave from their employers, these guys may never see a dime again. And this is the risk that they've put themselves in. And quite frankly, this is the risk that the league has put them in. All of these leagues have done this for these players and coaches when it comes to gambling, when it comes to sports betting, with their ties to the gambling world. That's why you see outcries from a guy like Jaylen Brown last week, wanting there to be more protection from the players, more protection from the Players Association for these players, and making sure that this does not become a regular thing. But unfortunately, it feels like we're at the tip of the iceberg here. It feels like there is so much more to come down. There's another shoe or two to drop here that is going to create an even bigger bombshell for not just the NBA, but the sports world in general. Things like this, why I don't get involved in sports gambling at all, because the kind of dirty stuff that this is ruins my enjoyment of the sports world, ruins my enjoyment of these games. Another thing before I move on from this, what I don't understand is back in 2023, Terry Rozier was investigated by the league for accusations of possibly being involved in gambling of some sort with sports betting, with these online sports betting books. And somehow he was able to make it through scotch-free. Makes you wonder how much they really care about this. All of this, even if you are someone that bets on the sports world, it's got to make you sick to your stomach, because we want our games to feel like they're authentic. We don't want to feel like the games are rigged, like the players are doing something dirty or the leagues are doing something dirty. I mean, you already have people that watch NFL games and think that games are fixed for all of the pretty boy quarterbacks in the league, especially with the thought that the NFL has been backing the Chiefs for the last 3 years, or now what the NFL has to deal with potentially the Lamar Jackson situation on whether or not the Ravens were doing something dirty when it came to his status on the injury report. But we don't want to sit there and feel like this is inauthentic. We don't want to sit there and feel like sports is just some rigged thing and there's the dark hand in a quiet room there that is guiding everything like a puppet, because then it ruins all of our enjoyment. I know it ruins my enjoyment and makes what is supposed to be our ultimate getaway in life, our ultimate release for just a couple hours from life's craziness, feel like it's fake and completely fixed. All right, I'm going to take my first break of the podcast here, but I got a lot I want to talk about over the next about 40 minutes or so here. I'll give you some thoughts on what was a very surprising Sunday in the NFL for yours truly, especially with our team, the New York Jets. on what was a bad Sunday for the Giants on more than one front, and why they weren't even the worst team on the field in Philadelphia on Sunday afternoon. Mixing some thoughts on the World Series, which goes to Game 4 tonight after the craziness of last night. So, got a lot I want to get to over the next about 40 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me this week. And as I tell you, each and every single week at this time, please sit back, relax, hell, put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
I had fully expected to come in here this week and start my diatribe on the New York Jets, talking about how much of an idiot Woody Johnson is with the comments that he made last week at the NFL owners meetings. He didn't just get behind a bus and run over Justin Fields. He pretty much backed up over him and then ran him over again with that same bus, the comments that he made about Justin Fields last week. And then at the end of the week, before we found out about Tyrod Taylor's injury, how he wasn't going to be available as an option at quarterback on Sunday when it was still up for debate who was going to be the quarterback, you had another incident of chippiness from Aaron Glenn when talking to the media. And I've told you all before, I really don't like how feisty he's gotten with the media for a guy that hadn't won a game yet. I mean, the arrogancy and audacity of the way he's acted has been quite frankly embarrassing. And this is someone who liked the hire, someone who's rooting hard for the guy, not just because he was a Jet and a member of my favorite Jet team of all time, but he's someone that worked his way up the coaching trees, is a disciple of Bill Parcells, and has truly earned this opportunity. But so far, he's acted like a total asshole. But then something funny happened on Sunday afternoon. Something that I never expected to happen. The Jets actually won a football game. They actually went out there and beat the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati by the score of 39-38 in what would turn out to be the only one-score game in the NFL across Week 8. There were some games that were competitive for a quarter or a half here or there. Some games that were in doubt when you went to halftime. But most of these games in their totality in Week 8 were blowouts, were beatdowns. And there was only one game that had any form of competitive nature at the end of it, and that was the Jets against the Bengals, which is surprising to me when you consider I thought this was the biggest mismatch of the weekend, even despite how bad the Cincinnati Bengals defense is. And trust me, watching them this week, they're atrocious. I mean, they should be getting down on their hands and knees, begging Trey Hendrickson to sign an extension with them right here, right now. You saw how god-awful they were after he left the game in the second half. But I looked at this as the biggest mismatch of the weekend when you consider no Garrett Wilson, no Sauce Gardner in a secondary that is already suspect to begin with. A quarterback in Justin Fields who had not only been smeared by his own owner in the last week, but also has not been, despite the lack of interceptions thrown this year, has not been the most accurate quarterback in the world, has been a hindrance for this Jets offense. I fully expected this to be a one-sided ass-kicking for the Bengals against the Jets as they were starting to get a little momentum playing with Joe Flacco. And early on, it looked like it was going to turn into that when the Jet defense could not stop the ground game. And you're watching Chase Brown and Samaje Perine going for 6 to 9 yards per carry. This had all the ingredients of another embarrassing Sunday with the Jets getting beat down by 15 going into the fourth quarter. But you give this team a lot of credit. Yeah, they were 0-7 coming into the game, but they showed some fight. They showed some feistiness. Their defense, outside of missing Sauce Gardner, largely had all of their pieces back intact with the return of Quincy Williams for the first time in a month. You had both of their edge rushers, Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson, out there. And even though that they only got to Joe Flacco one time, that one time turned out to be a very important time when Will McDonald got to Joe Flacco on that third down. That gave the Jets the football back, one more opportunity with about 5 minutes to go. And they, when in the past, have squandered those opportunities, made the most of it, made their opportunities count, especially after the first 2 touchdowns going for 2-point conversions, putting them in a position to have the go-ahead score there with about 2 minutes to change to go. Now, I, like a lot of Jet fans, was holding my breath even after Breece Hall had that cool touchdown pass to Mason Taylor in the back of the end zone, saying, still 1:54 left here. Bengals have all 3 timeouts. Joe Flacco is a cagey veteran. Probably only has to get them about 40 yards to get them within reasonable striking distance for Evan McPherson for a walk-off field goal and another heartbreaking loss here. But the Jets were able to hold on and finally get off the snide, get that first victory of the season. Listen, there's not going to be many wins for this Jet team this year. They still lack a lot to be desired. When you consider they have, beyond Garrett Wilson, no true definitive number 2 wide receiver. I mean, Josh Reynolds is considered their number 2 wide receiver, but even he's nothing special. He's nothing to write home about. Justin Fields has lacked consistency, hasn't gotten many of his weapons involved much, especially Breece Hall in the passing game, or we haven't been able to show off Mason Taylor much. The kid can play. Just get him the football, and he shows that he's got some athleticism to him and can do some cool things. But I give them a lot of credit for finally getting that first victory, finally getting the donut off the board and avoiding what I thought was inevitable. Even though it was only 0-7, watching this team through the first 7 weeks, it felt like 0-17 was going to happen. So on a day where you lose a legend, a guy that was the heartbeat of this Jet franchise for such a long time in Nick Mangold, the Jets gave you a reason to smile for once this season. Is it going to lead to many more victories this year? Who knows? But glad they finally got that one victory off their back. Now, it doesn't excuse a couple of things. For one, Cincinnati Bengals defense is god-awful. I mean, this is a team that has immense offensive talent, especially at the wide receiver position, and they're coming off of putting up 33 against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday Night Football the week before. But maybe we're starting to see That says more about the Steelers' defense and how much we've overrated them after they gave up 35 on Sunday night to the Packers, including 28 in the second half, and couldn't stop Jordan Love to save their lives. But what this also doesn't excuse is the chaotic week that it was off the field for the Jets, and why they continue to be most of the media's punching bag, why they are viewed as a dysfunctional franchise, not just with Aaron Glenn's comments toward the media saying, I can't tell you that, and I don't want to tell you that when talking about the quarterback decision. But Woody Johnson affirmed for me what I have long said. He is the worst owner in the NFL. He's taken that mantle over from Daniel Snyder since he is no longer part of the NFL. He's done really no winning outside of those 2 conference championship appearances in 2009 and 2010. And for him to make the comments that he made about Justin Fields, essentially blaming him for all of this. Now, Justin Fields by no means has been good, but you can't just place the blame on him. You got to place blame on this coaching staff. The defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes, has done an awful job. The offensive coordinator has not been creative at all. And at times, the head coach, Aaron Glenn, has looked completely over his head. And then there's the fact, say whatever you want about him. You can criticize all of his off-the-field nonsense. You can criticize all of his indecisiveness. But this was a franchise that essentially told a future Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers to get lost. We don't want you. We don't think we need you anymore. He has shown that he can still play somewhat for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, although I think some of that has been smoke and mirrors, and we're going to start to see a reality check for the Steelers as they have not taken advantage of the Baltimore Ravens. I'll get to that more in a little bit. But nothing that Woody Johnson has done since becoming the Jets owner has really left a lasting imprint, has really left something where you say, damn, Woody knows what he's doing. Especially when you look at the fact that every head coach that he's hired in that time has been a first-time head coach. Eric Mangini, Rex Ryan, Todd Bowles, Robert Saleh, Aaron Glenn. The only one that was not a first-time head coach was when he was away as the ambassador to the UK. And his brother, Christopher Johnson, foolishly took the advice of that D-bag Peyton Manning and hired his coffee boy, Adam Gase. So this is not someone who has made the most wise decisions in the world as an owner, and not someone that any Jet fan should feel very proud of or have any confidence in their franchise being run by going forward. And we just got to hope that someday that gliding light that shined down on the Commanders franchise, that kicked Daniel Snyder to the curb, shines down on us, and someone with a brain, someone that lets people do their jobs and hires the right people, comes along, tells Woody to get lost, and becomes the new owner of this team. And hell, if he could get us our own stadium so we're not tenants in MetLife anymore, that'd be okay in my book as well.
I'll be back.
Week 8 in the NFL was an extremely hard week to walk away from excited about, was an extremely hard week to come away with any grand takeaways, grand takes about it. Because as I said moments ago, the Jets-Bengals game was the only game that ended up being a one-score game, that ended up not being a blowout. I mean, you had some really poor decision-making by the NFL with how they scheduled some of these things. I understand everybody's got to have a bye, but do you really need 6 teams to have a bye in the same week? Leading up to us from 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock, only having 10 games on. And then in that 4:05, 4:25 window, you had Buccaneers versus the Saints and Colts versus the Tennessee Titans. Both games that were complete mismatches. Both games that were thorough ass kickings by the Colts and Buccaneers respectively. The only game that resembled any form of a competitive back and forth game for even a little while was the Broncos-Cowboys game, but in the end, the Cowboys got worn out by that altitude, and that altitude probably led to more disillusion by Jerry Jones, with him having the gall to say after the game that they might be just one player away from solving their issues on defense. Yeah, you had that one player. His name's Micah Parsons, and you traded him away, you fool. But there were some important things that did happen in Week 8. Some important teams that needed to come away with some victories. I mean, if the Texans stand any chance of making a late run at a wild card spot, because it looks like the Colts are just going to run away with that AFC South after their 0-3 start, they've needed to pile up some victories here and have done so through the month of October, including most recently taking advantage of the 49ers, who I think Mac Jones is starting to come back down to earth a little bit. And you clearly see that there's limitations for this guy. And that if you can shut down McCaffrey, unless he has all of his weapons at his dispense, he's just an average middle of the pack backup quarterback. Even as great as Kyle Shanahan is as a play caller, there's limitations to a guy like Mac Jones. So we'll see what happens if they get Brock Purdy back this Sunday to go up against the Giants. Definitely key for the Bills to get off the schneid after losing 2 in a row. And you knew they weren't going to go undefeated. Every really good team goes through peaks and valleys. But they got pretty much a free pass kind of game going up against the Bryce Youngless Carolina Panthers on Sunday and ran right down their throat. James Cook had a fantastic day, including that 64-yard touchdown. The only bad thing that happened for the Bills is losing Ed Oliver, and he's been in and out of the lineup with injuries, but now you lose him to a biceps tear, which leads to who knows how long he's going to be out. And it comes at really bad timing here, because yeah, you're going home, but you're going home to play the Kansas City Chiefs, your arch nemesis, on Sunday. And the Chiefs have started to unfortunately get things going here. The only hope you have is that it snows enough up there in Buffalo to ban their mascot, Taylor Swift, from showing up for the game. But it was key for the Bills to finally get off the schneid and finally win a game on Sunday after what had been a rough patch there for a couple of weeks. A team that's going to really start kicking themselves, and I mentioned them a few moments ago, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because they had a chance to run away with the NFC North, but they've allowed everybody to hang around. Now, I don't look at the Cleveland Browns as a threat in that division, and that they've got a whole lot of mess with that team, even beyond the quarterback situation. We'll see if at some point in the next couple of weeks, Kevin Stefanski makes the change from Dylan Gabriel to Shedeur Sanders. But the Steelers had a chance to run away with things at a time Lamar Jackson was out with injury. Now he's coming back, and they're only 2 games behind the Steelers and have 2 more matchups with the Steelers coming up this season. He'll return this coming Thursday night against the Dolphins down in Miami. And even though the Ravens have, even with Lamar Jackson, have not looked great, they blew that lead on opening night against the Bills in Buffalo. You have a fully healthy Lamar Jackson, with that defense starting to get healthy, with Derrick Henry still one of the best backs in the NFL. They are as dangerous a threat and are not a team we can easily sleep on. I think a lot of people have slept on the Philadelphia Eagles just because of the offensive issues that they have had so far this season, but they're still 6-2. And at times you watch them offensively and it looks like they just get bored, that they have so much offensive talent that they don't know what to do with it all. This week they were without A.J. Brown. They had mostly everybody clicking, especially that ground game, and Saquon Barkley put on a show. And you have to figure that the Eagles were going to come to play against the Giants. They got embarrassed by the Giants about 3 weeks ago on Thursday Night Football at MetLife Stadium. They wanted to hand a little bit of revenge out toward the New York Giants and say that, hey, that was more so a fluke. That was more so of you guys riding the high that is the Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterboo era beginning there. But we're still the big boys that run the NFC East. And Saquon Barkley sent quite a message when within the first 20 seconds he had a 65-yard touchdown run. Although the game could have been completely different if the referees did not get in the way and not make themselves look like utter and complete fools once again. I still don't understand a couple of things that happened in that game. For one, how is it pass interference on Darius Slayton down the field there in the fourth quarter? I know the game was starting to get a little bit out of hand there. And you had a little bit of hand fighting between him and Quinyon Mitchell. But more so, I thought Mitchell was the offender there with how he had a full grasp of Slayton's jersey. How are we calling that pass interference on Slayton by swiping his hand away when the guy behind him's grabbing his jersey? What do you expect him to do? But what was even worse is early in the game when you had that tush-push attempt, Thibodeau knocks out of Jalen Hurts' hand. Clearly knocks it out of his hand. But they said it was a first down and the play was stopped due to forward progress. Now there's clearly a point where you see Jalen Hurts' progress forward is stopped. But it was not when he crossed the first down yardage. It was about a couple of inches short of that. So how are you going to say it's stopped due to forward progress and it's a first down? It's either the play is stopped due to forward progress or that's a fumble there. I've never been someone who has a big problem with the tush push. I do agree the referees have to take better control when it comes to making sure that the guards on the Eagles are not jumping off sides or getting false starts before the ball is snapped. But how are you going to call that a stop due to forward progress? You can't treat the first down marker like it's the end zone. Ball crosses the end zone, it's a dead play. But he's crossing first down. He's reaching out across the first down marker. Knee hasn't hit the ground yet, and someone swipes the ball out. That should be fair play there. That should be a fair go there for either side. So I can understand some aggravation and frustration by the Giants, But the referees are not the reason why the Giants lost this game. First off, they had to be heartbroken over the loss of Cam Scatterbo. And even as a non-Giant fan, I feel bad. I have a pit in my stomach on that one, and I'm just sick to my stomach off of not just how ugly that injury was, but the loss for this team. Him and Jackson Dart had brought such a positive, upbeat vibe for the New York Giants, and they had become, even for the non-Giant fan, unless you're a Eagles, Cowboys, or Commanders fan, somewhat likable, somewhat easy to root for, even though they were 2-5 coming in. They looked like they were going to be maybe not a playoff team, because there's still so many good teams in the NFC, and I don't think they were going to get back to having a winning record at some point this year. But a team where you say, all right, you know what, they're a pain in the ass going down the stretch, and heading into next year with a healthy Malik Neighbors, someone to really take seriously, someone to deal with. But now you lose Scatterbo, you're without Neighbors. Jackson Dart, every other game, has gone in the tent for something. It feels like all of that momentum, the balloon that was positive vibes for the Giants, is slowly but surely leaking out energy. And now you're going to be going up against a desperate 49ers team this Sunday at 2-6, at a time where your defensive coordinator's been awful. Your head coach has got to be on the hot seat. How can you still have those positive, upbeat vibes if you're a New York Giant fan? You can't feel good about this defense that you were so high and mighty about coming into this season, allowing 500 yards of offense, but 276 of those yards coming on the ground. And there's one guy that has avoided criticism up until recently, but now people start to call him out, justifiably so. Can someone tell me where the hell Dexter Lawrence has been so far this season? I know he's been out there on the field. I've seen big number 97 out there, but I have not seen him in active participation. I've not seen him have a positive attribute, positive influence on these games for the Giants. I've seen Brian Burns be a beast and be a defensive player of the year candidate, even despite the Giants' poor record. Seen some good things from Kayvon Thibodeau, even seen a moment here or there from Abdul Carter. But Dexter Lawrence, you can make the argument, is stealing money from this team. Now, I don't know if he's still trying to work his way back into shape after last year's elbow injury, but this was a guy that had 9 sacks through 12 games last year before getting injured on Thanksgiving. So far, he's got half a sack, an interception, and very few pressures on the season. Pro Football Focus can give him whatever pass rush rating they want. You watch these games like I do, week in, week out basis, you could see this guy has not been a game wrecker. He has not been dominant in any sense of fashion, especially in stopping the ground game. And quite frankly, you could argue that he is stealing money from this organization. He wants to be all cute with his stupid nickname, Sexy Dexy, promote his social media following, his YouTube account. Dude, maybe you should focus more on football and getting back to being that dominant guy that the Giants paid prior to the 2023 season. You know, that guy that they gave $60 million guaranteed to, a total of $90 million through 2027. Yeah, where is that guy? And it's not just made just some random hack, some random Joe Schmo sitting here on a podcast talking about this. You're even seeing one of the voices of the Giants, one of the legendary figures of the Giants, Carl Banks calling him out on his post-game podcast with his radio partner Bob Papa in the last couple of days, saying no one respects you anymore. Nobody. Telling him he needs to wake up and get back to that dominant figure. Because until he does, this Giant defense is going to keep getting run over. And they were expected to have a dominant front seven. That was what was necessary to protect what is the weakness of that Giant defense with their secondary. But so far, Lawrence has looked like a guy that has been MIA. Now, whether he's still recovering from his off-season surgery or he's just let all of his early success and all of his success social media-wise get to his head, and that guy that we thought was going to be a dominant player for years to come has slowly but surely faded away and dissipated from the player the Giants thought they were getting.
I'll be back.
Even though this World Series was the last thing I wanted to see, I was hopeful that we were going to get either the Brewers or the Mariners in here. But unfortunately, Dodgers Blue Jays is the series that we're getting. I must admit that it has provided some exciting moments, some really surprising performances, and left even yours truly on the edge of his seat, not knowing what's coming next in this series in what will hopefully be a 6 or 7 game World Series. And in game 1, you had a good showing by this Blue Jay bullpen as the Blue Jays wore down Blake Snell to the point where they got to the underbelly of the Dodgers bullpen, beat them down in the 6th inning, including that grand slam by Barger. But the one constant that the Dodgers have had in their rotation throughout this postseason continued to show up for them in this series, and that's Yamamoto. Second consecutive complete game, something that they really needed. And I think not just was the reason they won game 2, but the reason they won game 3 last night. A game that no matter who wins this series, we are going to remember for a long time to come. We are going to sit there and marvel at that 18-inning marathon these two teams played last night for years. When you take into account that at nearly 3 a.m. East Coast time, Freddie Freeman hit that walk-off home run off Brendan Little to send Chavez Ravine into hysteria. But the great performance that you had throughout that game, not just by Ohtani with 2 home runs and 2 doubles in that game, and I understand people are aggravated by the fact that he kept getting intentionally walked through his final 5 at-bats in that game. And I'm not the greatest fan of the intentional walk in the world, mostly because I want them to actually have to throw the pitches. I don't want just the manager, the pitcher, or the catcher to have the ability to throw up 4 fingers and send the guy on his way to first base. That to me takes away a little bit of excitement from the game. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I've seen so many times back under the old rules where it affected the game when a pitcher had to throw those 4 intentional passes outside the strike zone, whether it be them not being able to throw strikes or laying a fat one in there for the next batter. But that's the way the rules are, unfortunately. But Yamamoto won last night's game for the Dodgers in game 2 Because even with another short start for the Dodgers, they had a fully rested bullpen. Even though they didn't get a lot of length out of Glasnow last night, they were able to turn to that bullpen, go, 9 or 10 guys deep, and survive 13 2/3 with only giving up 1 run, matching the Blue Jays pitch for pitch, even getting performances from guys that you had to look them up on MLB.com, be like, who the hell is this guy? Whether it be Emmett Sheehan or what turned out to be the ultimate hero of the night, Will Klein, a guy who's been DFA'd on multiple occasions, who's never thrown more than 35 pitches in a game. He goes out there, throws 4 shutout innings, including striking out batters with the bases loaded, setting them up for Freeman's heroics in the bottom of the 8th inning. Now, I will say it did become a little less suspenseful with all the moves that the Blue Jays had made as far as pinch runners are concerned. I understand losing Springer, and highly unlikely he's going to play in Game 4. We'll see what his status is throughout the remainder of this series. But pinch running for Springer, Bichette, Kirk, and Barger, between the 4 of those guys, they were 6 for 15, including Kirk's 3-run homer. The guys who came in for them after that were automatic outs. The pinch runners who had to stay in that game and bat because it wasn't like you could bring the original guys back out there, went a combined 2 for 17, and they were coming up seemingly in every big spot from the 7th inning on and did nothing. Provided no offensive threat, no offensive life for them, and allowed the Dodgers, a team that has had a lot of concerns with its bullpen in this postseason, a team that came into that game last night with a postseason bullpen ERA of north of 5, to get through 13 innings of clean baseball from their bullpen, have so many heroic performances, even get to the point where you had Yamamoto standing up in the bullpen in the bottom of the 18th inning, warming up, preparing to come out there to pitch for the 19th inning. A guy that threw a complete game in Game 2 was prepared to come in relief in Game 3. That's how crazy and hectic this game got to. Hell, you even saw on the Blue Jays side of things, they used up so many guys. They were down to little pitching for them that they had sent tonight's starter Shane Bieber out there to stretch out. Now, thankfully, he didn't throw any warm-up pitches to take himself out of availability for tonight. But now you're left wondering what's left of either of these pitching staffs. It's going to be really fascinating watching these next 2 games because the Dodgers haven't gotten great length out of their starting pitchers. Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow haven't gone beyond the 5th inning. Yamamoto's been the one saving grace for them. The Blue Jays have gotten no length out of their starters. Yasevich went 4 innings the other night. You only got into the 5th inning with Scherzer last night. And these bullpens, they have got to be worn out. I mean, look at a guy like Luis Varland for the Blue Jays. He's now pitched in 12 of their 14 postseason games this year. That guy's got to be running on fumes at this point. I just hope for these guys' sake that it doesn't affect any of them's long-term playing careers. But even for someone who hated the idea of this series, I'm a baseball fan. I'm going to be locked in. I'm going to be glued in to tonight, seeing what happens here. Whether the Dodgers can take control of this series now with Ohtani on the mound, and that's going to be something to watch, especially the first couple innings, as he was dealing with a little bit of a hamstring or groin issue last night, seeing how that may or may not affect him on the mound. But also, this Blue Jay team has been very tenacious this year. Every time you think that you can count them out, whether it be during the season, and if the Yankees or the Red Sox got close to them in the division race. They showed fight. They showed fight throughout this postseason, whether it be after Judge's dramatic game-winning home run in the division series, coming back and winning that series in 4 games, or trailing 2-0 to the Mariners in the ALCS and still winning that series in 7 games, even being down 3-2 going back to Toronto. They've been a team that you really cannot count out, so nothing's going to surprise me over the remainder of this series. I'm going to be fascinated to see who's that hero that steps up, because 2 nights ago it was Yamamoto, last night it was Freddie Freeman and Will Klein. I don't think we've even really had someone that has fully declared themselves as the MVP of this series yet. And someone could be that out of nowhere, unexpected, David Freese, Aaron Boone type hero that one of these teams ultimately needs, whether it be in the Dodgers' hope of repeating and forming a dynasty of their own, or the Blue Jays' hope in bringing Canada its first championship in over 30 years. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week. Like I said earlier, folks, we got one life, so you might as well try to live it up to the fullest. And I'll talk to you guys again, same time, next Monday. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.